Hello everyone, welcome to this video in which I'm going to answer a couple of questions that were asked of me yesterday during not a live workshop, but a workshop on Zoom. So there were people there, and then I had a Google Doc to which people could add questions during the workshop, and I answered them in the last 20 minutes or so. And there were some really nice, interesting questions that I think are interesting for a YouTube video like this. The Zoom session is a little bit too long to post on YouTube, but just the question portion is great, but the quality of the image wasn't good enough for YouTube. So I'm just doing it again. And maybe I'll come up with better answers than yesterday, or more elaborate answers. I have my guitar here in case I have to demonstrate something, because people always ask me with these rambling videos, why do you have a guitar if you don't play it? I usually do play it a little bit, but I never know what's going to happen because I didn't script the video. So let's take a look at those questions. And it's not just two questions, I can scroll in it, but I did group some questions together that have the same idea behind them. So these are two questions, not one question. I left out the names of the people that asked them because, well, it was a private Zoom session. I don't know if these people want their names on YouTube. So this is the first question, and it says, I've heard of some notable OG Gypsy jazz players who have very limited vocabularies but do a lot with them. Is that true? And what's the smallest amount of vocab you think someone could have and still play consistently well? And then the second question, which is basically the same question, the same gist. Oh, it actually has the name of the first question giver. He wouldn't mind though, but I'll take it out. I want to echo that question as well. I hear this about a lot of my favorite players, most notably Chavelo, but even Stochelo has quite a few stock phrases and patterns that he gets the most out of. I'm also curious what guidance you would give to build that foundation after mastering the fundamental shapes. So the fundamental shapes are just the 7 shapes in my first book that I identified as being the building blocks from which you should start your improv journey. So they're both asking me about this observation that I once made, and I think I posted it on Facebook, and I also said it in some YouTube videos, that many players don't seem to have a very large vocabulary. They are just very good at manipulating I wouldn't say necessarily a small vocabulary, but a carefully curated vocabulary, which ends up usually being between 20 and 30 unique phrases. And with that, I mean like they have their own identity. They're very distinct from the other phrases. Because, of course, a good jazz improviser is not playing the same phrase over and over. They are manipulating that small vocabulary to create unique sounding phrases. But when you would write them down and you would compare the two different sounding phrases like that together, and you say, okay, actually, that's the same foundation. So, for example, let's say the basis of the phrase is this. You see, I'm playing guitar. So that's an F major 7 arpeggio starting on the major 7. It's also one of my fundamental shapes, but a player that uses this a lot, for example, is Stochelo, Rosenberg, but also Django, and many people. In fact, probably every jazz guitar player. But he wouldn't play it like this every time. Wouldn't every opportunity he has, he wouldn't be playing. Maybe he would do, many variations, but they're all based on this major 7 arpeggio idea. And you could see like this one phrase could already spawn maybe 100 phrases. So if I say a small vocabulary of between 20 and 30 phrases, that doesn't translate into the actual identification of 20 phrases exactly like that. But there could be 300 phrases, but they all have the same building blocks. So the question here is, the first question, what's the smallest amount of vocabulary you think someone could have and still play consistently well? And the answer to that question might seem a little bit too mathematical or cold, but that's what I really think, It's not something that I just say because I want to say it, but that's because that's what I really think, and it's based on literally thousands of transcriptions I have made of many players across many tunes, That's maybe the most important thing about this. Many tunes. And that thing is that I have identified 7 kinds of chord progressions that you should be fluent on. Now, it's not something that I invented or that's like a novel idea, but I don't hear enough people talk about it. But that might also be my lack of listening to other people talk about this. But so far, when I watch other YouTube instructors, they don't really say it like this. But here are the 7 categories, and I'll also put them on the screen. I'm live streaming this in my Discord. There's people watching, but they don't see this graphic, but I'll put it on the screen for you on YouTube. There is 2-5-1s, category 1. Category 2 is dominant chains. Category 3 is turnarounds. Category 4 is Christoph changes. And then there's 3 more categories. That's static chords. A static major chord, so 1 chord for a long time. A static minor chord. That's a minor chord for a long time. And with long time, I mean like maybe 4 bars, right? But could also be 8 bars or 16 bars if it's a modal tune. And then the third category, of course, in static chords is dominant chords. Now, so you might say, what about half diminished? Well, half diminished is minor 6. So that's already covered in minor. Now, I don't want to expand too much in what these categories are exactly because I already did it in many videos and I will link such a video in the description. So if you're wondering about what is a 2-5-1 or what does he mean by Christoph changes, it's explained in that video. But so these 7 categories, if you consider them to be the building blocks of most tunes, and most tunes are actually built from these formulas, maybe with a slight minor variations. For example, the 2-5-1 could either be 4 bars in total, but they also have short variants where there are just 2 bars. But the formula doesn't change. If you think of these 7 formulas as building blocks of a tune, then the only thing you need to do to be able to be fluent on most normal tunes, again, I'm not talking about like very weird tunes that have been written later, like by Wayne Shorter, which he deviates from these formulas, right? Or Herbie Hancock, or well, every composer since then. If you just talk about the normal standards, like before that time, I'm talking about All the Things You Are, I Can Give You Anything But Love, Night and Day, old Parker tunes, right? Confirmation, every blues, every rhythm changes. If you think about those tunes, they all consist of these building blocks. So if you're just fluent on those building blocks, then you can play most tunes. So then the question is like, how much vocabulary do you need per formula? And so here's my calculation for that. So if you think purely in phrases, so licks, right? So I have a 2-5-1 lick. This lick fits on a 2-5-1 in C. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's your first phrase for a 2-5-1. Now, if you take 3 of those, I think 2 is the absolute minimum, but I'm going here for some kind of artistic quality. If you take 3 phrases per formula, and there are 7 formulas, so 3 phrases for 2-5-1s, 3 phrases for dominant chain, and I would then go for a dominant chain consisting of 2 chords, maybe 4. 3 phrases per Christoph changes, 3 phrases per turnaround, and then 3 nice phrases for static major chord, for static minor chord, and for static dominant. That's 21 phrases. If you can manipulate, you see it's between 20 and 30. If you can manipulate 21 phrases with complete freedom, so you're not always stuck to play it the same way. So if I take this lick, I could also play it like 1, 2, 3, 4. Or 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? The last one is maybe a little bit more variety, but you are working with these phrases daily to find as much variety in these phrases as you can. If you can do it with 21 phrases, I think that's enough vocabulary. So that might sound like an easy task because you think, okay, 21 phrases, I could find them in a week, maybe in a day. But the problem here is that it's very difficult to find 21 phrases that you like, first of all, but then also that you can play in any tempo, and also that work together, that kind of resonate with what you can do. Technically, musically, creatively, it's very difficult to find those phrases. So you're not going to find them in a week. It could take years before you find them, and stuff might rotate in, might rotate out. So even though it sounds very simple, in practice it's not that simple. I see a question here in the chat. Also positionally, making sure there is positional diversity in the phrase choice. Yes, so that's another good point. So if somebody says, okay, the 21 phrase should also be kind of spread out over the next, so that you're not always stuck in one position. Yeah, all of these things, they start to count, like register, variety in the phrases, like are they all just straight eighth note lines or are they all triplet lines? Is it all blues? Now, there's a problem with it. I mean, a guitar player like Uwe Canis, of course, most of his vocabulary is based on blues elements, right? That's what defines him as a player. But not only, right? Let's say that Uwe has a vocabulary of 30 phrases. It's probably something like that. I didn't count it yet, although I made many transcriptions of Uwe. I did count it with some other players, and I always found between 20 and 30. So let's say Uwe has 30 phrases as a basis. I'm not saying that's the correct number, but let's say. It's not 30 blues. I think it's probably 22 blues and 8 other stuff, like pentatonics or bebop stuff, or maybe it's arpeggio-based, right? It's not only blues, but most of it is blues, and that gives the blues identity. Like for a player like Stochelo, most of his phrases are built around a diminished arpeggio. So, and then he has many phrases inside the diminished arpeggio. Some are so different that I would even count them as separate phrases. But let's say Stochelo also has 30, let's say. Then it's also 22 is based around diminished and 8 are different. Something like that, right? And that determines the sound of a player like Stochelo. Now, some players, so not all players have this limited, not really limited, but let's call it limited. Some players have a huge vocabulary, like Pirelli, for instance. There's a player like that, or Julian Lage. Although they're not necessarily playing, they think in phrases, right? But that's also maybe the reason why they have such a huge vocabulary. It's more difficult sometimes also to recognize these players, apart from the fact that they have such a huge range of things they can play. But you might mistake them for someone else. If you hear them for a short time, you might think, hey, that sounds like Charlie Christian. But it was not Charlie Christian. It was just 8 bars of a Pirelli solo where he just kind of channeled Charlie Christian. Although I've never really heard him do that. But let's say it could happen, right? That wouldn't happen with a player like Charlie Christian, because Charlie Christian also has a limited vocabulary and he always sound like Charlie Christian. But Pirelli can sound like Charlie Christian in the first 4 bars, and then he can sound like Oscar Peterson on guitar in the next 4 bars, and then he will sound like John McLaughlin for 2 bars, right? So that is great if you can do that. That also has inherent problems in it, that sometimes you don't sound like yourself anymore. I'm not saying that Pirelli has the problem, but that's something that could happen if you have unlimited vocabulary. Would you think this applies to guitarists especially, or is it the same for pianists in your opinion? It's the same for pianists. Why do you recognize Oscar Peterson? Why do you recognize Bill Evans? What's the difference between Oscar Peterson and Bill Evans, right? I think the cop-out answer is here to talk about the tone or something. Because I bet that if Oscar Peterson would play with the Bill Evans sound, but still play Oscar Peterson phrases, you would never think it's Bill Evans. You would always still hear Oscar Peterson. Why? Because of all these blues phrases and all the double stops playing in Oscar Peterson. And Bill Evans has this thing where he comes with his left hand at the same rhythm as his right hand, for instance, right? So Oscar Peterson never does that. Bill Evans has these long lyrical lines based on a lot of smart chromaticism and scalar lines. That's something that Oscar Peterson obviously has, but not as intricate as Bill Evans. So, no, I think it goes for every instrument. If there's an instrument where it's maybe less apparent, I would say maybe it's like trumpet. And the reason I say that is because there's many very chromatic trumpet players. Some are so chromatic that it's very difficult to even hear the changes sometimes. So then it becomes less apparent. Yeah. Not to say that there's not great trumpet players that outline the changes, of course. They exist, Lee Morgan, Freddie Hubbard. But there's also many chromatic trumpet players. And then it's a different story. Okay, so then let's look at this. I'm also curious what guidance you would give to build that foundation after mastering the fundamental shapes. And so he's basically asking, how do I get this vocabulary? And I already touched upon it a little bit. I don't have really a good methodology that will give you that vocabulary. My way is to just try and transcribe as much as possible, listen to players that you like. Hopefully it's a wide selection of players, but that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. If it's just one player, it's also possible, but you will end up sounding like that player. If you just take maybe 5 players and transcribe whatever you like from them and practice everything that you found interesting as hard as you possibly can. So maybe we're talking here about 100 phrases. You may end up with 5 phrases that really connect. But now think about how much time does it take to practice 100 phrases really seriously with all dedication and practice methodologies that I always advocate for. That's going to be hundreds of hours. It's going to be months, if not years. So maybe after like 2 years of intense practice, maybe 1 year of intense practice, depending on the amount of hours, you end up with 5 of these phrases that really are part of you. It's like there's so much part of you that you don't really even consider them to be, or you don't even know where you took them from. They just, you hear them all the time. You find variations in them. You can connect them to everything you want. So that's 5. So to get to this 21, if you take this math, not saying it's exactly correct, but like a approximation, it's going to take you at least 5 years to get to these 25 phrases. But I'm guessing it's longer because stuff happens, you change your technique gets better, you want to explore more stuff, you decide, you know what, all my lines are 8th notes, I need triplets, so some of the lines will go away, you need to find other stuff. So I always say to people when they want a timeline, I say, okay, if you practice with dedication and structure, then it's probably going to take you around 6 years to start sounding reasonable. But this also takes into account that your technique is bad. Let's say that you have excellent technique, right? There's no secrets left on this instrument. Then it's going to probably take you around 3 to 4 years to sound reasonable, which means that if you play in a jam session, people listen to it, say, that's okay, that's great, yeah. Maybe not ready for stage yet, but it's okay. It's going to take another 4 years before people start turning their heads. Wow, that's. I wish I could play like that. Right? So we're talking here about 7 years, 7 to 10 years. Yeah. So even with that small vocabulary goal, it's, I think, still going to be difficult. This is a good one. I've heard this before. If you don't have vocabulary at all, it's actually really fast to integrate. Yes, that is correct, because if you have 0 phrases and somebody shows you... right? You're going to learn that day, and that will stick with you for months to come. That's true. But here's the problem with that, and you know it. When you have maybe like 3 phrases, right? There's one great 2-5-1 phrase, you know one very good bluesy lick, and you know a great turnaround. There will be so many holes in your playing, so that you cannot play a full tune, right? You have a lot of holes, so then either you play bullshit there, or you don't play, or you are afraid to join a jam. You have so many holes that the only thing you think about is, okay, how do I plug these holes? How do I... And very soon you're in the same boat as everyone else. Like, those few phrases don't mean anything anymore. It's not enough. You're not satisfied by it. You cannot be satisfied by it because you actually don't sound like a full jazz improviser. So you're right. Like, those first 3 phrases are going to be great. But also those 3 phrases might not be phrases that you end up liking enough to keep. Right? I wish I had the solution. I had a good answer for how to do this exactly. I know a certain 100% guaranteed way to get there. And I talk about that in many videos. That's what my books are about. But I cannot give you the fastest way. I can give you a guaranteed way, a safe way to get there. But it's still going to take a long time. But at least you're getting somewhere, because I know people that have been practicing for decades. Right? I see them all the time. They come to all the camps I teach and workshops, and they still sound like beginners almost, like not fluent improvisers. And that's because they've been practicing. Maybe the wrong way sounds harsh, but yeah, in fact, it's the wrong way because they didn't get anywhere. So the way I provide might not be the most artistically deep way or the most lyrically satisfying way, but it's a guaranteed way. If you do what I always teach in the workshops, in my books, I guarantee you will get to a point where you start sounding like a fluent improviser. But it's going to take a lot of effort on your part Still, I don't have a silver bullet. Right? It's gonna still take you, let's say, 6,000, 7,000 hours of practice. You say also, as long as the process starts from where do I have holes in my playing when improvising. Yeah, that's what I said. But then still, you might opt for a quick plug of the hole, but you might not be satisfied with it. Like in 2 months, you discover, okay, this phrase is so untasteful and it doesn't really fit with all the other stuff I'm doing. So then you might let go of it and you don't want to play it anymore. I've seen that many times. Actually happened to me as well. A good example of that for me recently is this phrase. So this D major, this is Stockler phrase. But look at my right hand. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 downstrokes. And that's nice in like a medium tempo. Kind of works. But if the tempo is above 270, it doesn't work anymore. It works for Stockler, right? Stockler can play this until like 360, no problem. You would never know it's all those downstrokes. But for me, I started noticing my timing would suffer. I would miss notes. So I changed it recently to this. So I do. And I could also make triplets. Right now, it took me forever to make that change. I can tell you, it took me forever. I say recently, but recently I started actually playing it in improvs. But I've been working on that for like a year, right? Because I would always go back to the old one, and I would do the old one, and I'd be bummed about it immediately because like, no, I don't want to play this one because I want to get the other one in my playing. So yeah, right. This process of deciding to abandon a phrase you've worked can be hard psychologically. Yeah, it is, and it's also frustrating. Okay, let's go to the next question. Listening to Django, actually the person that asked that question is in the chat here. Listening to Django, I'm always stunned by his phrasing. He was able to begin and end his phrases anywhere within the bar and have each of these sound coherent, musical, surprising, and exciting. How do we work on that in our own improv? And I got another question that is very similar. It goes like this. Learning long lines is great, or learning phrases, licks. More coherence and longer musical thoughts. Set exercise and creative reruns. Those are two practice methodologies that I always teach to do this, to practice phrases. Are also great, lots of focused time with those ideas. But there are millions of lines made by combining a bunch of core ingredients or core ideas or ingredients. And I wonder if there's a way to somehow extract those ideas and work on them like basic words that can become part of the mind and body so that longer lines can flow more naturally on top of that. I think it's very well worded, but it's a little wordy. So let me make that a little shorter. So what he's saying is like instead of practicing phrases and licks, why not practice the building blocks of music, like arpeggios, scales, motives, cells, things like, okay, I'm going to practice the major scale in thirds and then in fourth. I've never done that stuff, right? But there's lots of people that do that, and they say, okay, now I'm going to practice every kind of enclosure. So if I want to do enclosure C, I can do, whatever it is. And there's also names for all of these enclosures. And so now I'm not practicing lines, but I'm practicing building blocks, and then hopefully, in the end, I just create lines out of these building blocks. Does this work? Yes, it works. In fact, there are whole systems for this, like Barry Harris has whole systems for this. It definitely works because there are many great players that have done that. But based on my experience, this is not a guaranteed way. I know many people that have been doing this for decades and didn't get anywhere. And I don't know what the cause of this is. Maybe they weren't doing it correctly, or maybe they were too lazy. But no one was there to correct them to do it. And there's also other ways, like singing and stuff. I've seen so many people that have failed at that. And then they go in my workshop and I show them my way. And that day even, they already sound better. I'm not saying good, but you know why? Because I showed them one really nice phrase that they're applying now, because like JP just said, it's the only one they know. And the moment they play that, they sound great. Now imagine having 21 of those devices. And here we get to, and also we'll get back to the first question here. So here we get to a fundamental principle that I have. And I basically start every workshop with that. And I also started the workshop yesterday with this. It's that I like to think of learning a skill as a game. And if you know something about games, they always have a winning condition, right? And when you explain the rules of a game, you should start, or it's generally a good idea to start with the winning condition. So if I explain the rules of chess, I say, okay, you have won once you trap the king, right? And now I'm going to explain how to do that, how the pieces move. But you have this context, all right, that's the winning condition, right? And when I explain Mortal Kombat, I would say you've won once you've drained their health bar twice. And then we explain, okay, you have to press this button to kick, and then there's these combos, and it gets very complicated, but the winning condition is known. Now, because I treat learning a skill as a game, or learning jazz improv as a game, so I'm not trying to cheapen the jazz as an art form, but just learning it, I like to think of it as a game. So that my methodologies are also always gamified. There's also a winning condition. So the winning condition for me for jazz improv is you are able to play flowing eighth note lines, usually swinging eighth note lines, that outline the chord changes of a chosen tune in some way. So that is, I'll put it on screen. That's my winning condition. Once you've are able to do that, you've won at this game. Jazz is not a zero-sum game, right? So there's no losers. So it's open-ended. You can always get better at the winning condition. But I think the smartest strategy to get good at jazz is not the only strategy, but it's the smartest strategy, because it's the least frustrating one, is to get to this winning condition as fast as possible. If you agree with this winning condition, by the way, if you don't agree with this goal at all, if you say that I'm not interested in that at all, then don't listen to anything I have to say. If you see something that's like, oh yeah, that would actually be great if I could sit down at a jam session and somebody wants to play How High the Moon, and I could play these flowing eighth note lines. Why eighth note lines? Because 80% of jazz solos consist of eighth note lines. Go listen to any jazz solo. With good timing, but the swinging, right? That's also part of my system. But good timing, and it outlines the chord change. That would be great. If I could do that, yeah, I'd be happy with that. I'm not talking about the artistic value of your solo, the uniqueness, or I don't know, the lyricalness, right? Or the outsideness. I'm just talking about this thing in as simple terms as you want. Then, if you think that's a great idea, then why not get there as fast as possible? Because that basically means that you could sit down in a jam session, play most tunes, and be very happy with your own playing, because you are happy with that winning condition. So all my methodologies and my strategies are based on getting you to that winning condition as fast as possible. And I do that in a gamified way. If you're interested in that, my books are all about that, my Discord. Now, once you've reached the winning condition, now we get to the first question. He was able to begin and end his phrases anywhere within the bar, have each day sound coherent, musical, surprising, exciting. How do we work that in our own improv? Well, we could talk about that after you've reached the winning condition. So, if you're watching this and you're learning jazz improv, think, are you past this winning condition? Have you won at this game yet? If you haven't, forget about any of that. Now, I know the person that asked this is actually a great player. I met him, and he has already reached his winning condition. So for him, it's very relevant. But most people that I see that come to a camp have not reached this winning condition. In fact, I say 80% of the people I meet are very far from it. 10% are pretty close, and then there's 10% are way past it. And then I always wonder, why do you come to my workshops? But I enjoy it. We can still talk about these things. But it's not very relevant for most people. The main problem is that most teachers that you go to are past the winning condition. And they are thinking about these things. Coherency is actually a thing that I also think about. But let's say musicality, surprise, excitement, lyrical, artistry. They think about these things. And then the mistake, in my eyes, they make is they start talking about these ideas with people that have not yet won at the game. And because these people that have not won at the game are not capable of winning at the game yet and also have no idea how to get there, they start thinking, oh, I need to work on my lines have to be more surprising, more musical. I have to be able to play across the bar line. But I think this is a mistake, because now you've lost that winning condition. You've lost the goal there. You're busy with elements that are only important after you've reached that winning condition. That is my view on it. I'm not saying it's the correct view, but it's the view I take when I teach, and it's also the view I took when I learned to play this style. Now, here's the funny thing. So when I talk about this winning condition, I say afterwards, any direction is possible. You want to work on being more lyrical? Start working on that. You want to work on taking little small building blocks and expanding them, work on motively playing, work on all of these concepts, go do it. I haven't really found that I want to do that. I just want to learn more lines and find more combination between lines. And that works great because when people hear me play, usually they like it. They think it's good. And when I hear myself back, I also think it's good. So I found happiness in just keep going on that road I took from the beginning and just get better at it. Now, am I a musical genius when I play gesso? I don't think so. But do I want to be? Do I need to be? I don't think so either, right? Because I just want to play well according to my parameters, which are swinging lines that are creating a coherent solo. So like everything is connecting in a nice way. I'm not repeating myself too much. I have a good balance between single lines, maybe octaves, chords. Like I think about these things more. I think more about taking those ingredients and making them better and better. Instead of, okay, I need to have my own voice, which I do anyway. But that's the other thing, right? I don't think that if you don't do these things like work on your musicality, that you cannot reach an artistic level. I think you could still reach it. There's many ways, but I don't think we even have to have the discussion if you haven't reached the first winning condition. Okay, let's go on. I have one last question. It's this one. And this is a question I actually asked. I put it on the form myself because I was surprised that nobody put it on the form, because this is the question I get most during workshops. And the question goes like this. I tend to forget phrases. No matter how long I practice them, when the time comes to play a solo during a jam or gig, I almost never manage to play any of them. Do you have a solution for this? So, let me first answer the question. No, I don't have a solution for that. But I did think of a very nice analogy from gaming, that even if you don't understand how this game works, you can see how this happens. Now, if you ever played a fighting game like Street Fighter, right? Street Fighter 2, or I think we're at 5 right now, or Mortal Kombat, or Tekken, or any of those games that require a high technical level of execution to be good at them. Really like very high level. I remember a time, as an anecdote, that I really got into, this is a long time ago, I really got into Street Fighter 2, I think. I was practicing my ass off, learning all these combinations. Then a friend came to the house and said, oh yeah, I haven't played this game for a couple of years, but I used to be obsessed. I was playing like 8 hours a day. And then I said, okay, let's play, because I've learned all these combos. And in the first 10 seconds, I realized, okay, I suck. Like it was no effort for him. He would just beat me. That didn't matter what I did, and he was not even moving that much, right? He just knew the game at such a deeper level than I that I had no chance. Okay, that's the anecdote. But here's what happens when you with Street Fighter 6. Okay, here's what happens when you learn those games. You learn the basic moves, right? But that's not enough. Now you need to learn the combos, a combination of moves. And these usually are very difficult to master. They require very precise inputs, button presses, at a very precise timing. I've actually heard, or I've done that even myself, people practicing these things with a metronome sometimes. So you're working on these inputs, already very difficult. And maybe after a couple of hours, there's one of those combos you can do pretty fluently. That's pretty much like learning a lick, right? And then the next step is that you go into a practice match, and there's a computer-generated character, so it's not controlled by another player, it's controlled by a computer, and you tell the computer to do a certain set of moves over and over. So maybe the other character is crouching and then kicking every 3 seconds, right? Just over and over. It's not attacking you, it's just doing those things. And then you time your combo on those moves, those predictable moves. And then you do maybe another routine, right? And there's many routines, you can do all of them. And you can do all of them fluently. And then you go into a real match. You know what's going to happen? You won't be able to do that combo once or not with any effect, because this other player is not standing in the corner doing the same moves over and over. He starts somersaulting over you. He's doing his own combos. He's running around you. So what happens is you panic and you start what they call button mashing. You start pressing random buttons because you're just frustrated, right? And every time you try the combo, he actually hits you before you can put off the combo, and your health bar is going down. So you try every other thing that you could think of, which is nothing. So it's button mashing. And the combo is not happening at all. And you're very frustrated. And this will happen for many matches, maybe for many months. This is exactly the same that happens when you practice a phrase at home with your backing tracks in a safe environment, and you do it over and over, and maybe you have a backing track that is just 2-5-1s in all 12 keys that I have. And then you go to a jam session and they play a song that you kind of know but not really, and they play it pretty fast or like an uncomfortable tempo for you, and the guys are playing very loud rhythm. There's so much stuff happening there, random stuff that you cannot really account for, that the chance of you actually playing that phrase and sounding good is very low, right? So there's many other thoughts that come into your head, other stuff that you have to think about your sound, about your technique, about the tune that you don't really know. So yeah, there's no room left in your head to actually play that phrase. So what's the solution for that? Well, I don't have a solution that is quick and easy, but the solution is to keep practicing at home and exposing yourself to that situation as much as possible. Go to every jam, go to every festival, just play every tune and do the best you can. And I promise, if you practice seriously at home, maybe using my methodologies, then some lines will start to appear. Some lines will start to feel natural. Which lines? You will never know. So don't think that you are the only one not being able to play any line or forgetting them. That happens to everyone, literally everyone. And I talked to so many people about it. I remember this one thing. This is a very good example. I had to play with a very good Gypsy jazz guitar player. It's maybe not famous, but known. Not on the level of Stochelo, but a well-known guitar player. And I was not playing guitar back then. I played violin, and we had a concert, and I wanted to play Hans Circle Rose. You know, like the Django version has a very famous intro. The violin plays this 1, 2, 3. Now the guitar, or Django, is playing this in the recording. So together you hear those two chords together. Now, you need a violin and the guitar to do that, to get the full sound. But many bands don't have a violin player, so they start changing it to play it alone, right? They play something like something like that, or something else even. So most guitar players are familiar with that way of playing it, but I wanted to do the Django version, so he didn't know that. So I showed him, I said on violin, I said, just play these notes. It's very easy, right? It's the same two notes and you slide them down 2 frets. And do an octave lower. And an octave lower is even single notes. And then the tune starts. So I showed him that. We rehearsed that. And it went fine. I said, yeah, that's nice. Yeah, I recognize the sound from Django. Then right before we went on stage, I said, let's go again. And we were backstage and we did it again. And he's like, oh yeah. And then during the concert, he just did. And obviously I was annoyed, right? Because we rehearsed this. And then he said, yeah, I chickened out. I wasn't sure, and I just did the thing I know. So even a simple thing like this, it is really simple. It's not even a phrase. A good player like that decided to abandon it in the gig. If that doesn't tell you that this happens to everyone, then I don't know what story would. I actually just remember this story. This is a good story to tell in this case. You never know what's going to happen. You might feel you're nervous. We are at the big concert, and there was many musicians in the audience. He just got nervous, and he thought, okay, I don't know how it goes. I'm gonna play this. Sounds good too, but it kind of ruined my thing. So that is what I wanted to say about these questions. So what is what's the main takeaway, I think, from this video is that, what's the main takeaway? So the main takeaway is that don't overcomplicate things. Don't try to be too artistic. And I've said it before, be more of a robot, be more of an AI that trains itself on the vocabulary of great players before you. Train yourself to that very mechanically. I wouldn't say mindlessly, but I mean, the practicing of it can be very repetitive. Luckily, I have ways to make it a little bit more interesting, but yeah, it's still a grind until you've reached that winning condition, and then we can start talking about music. That is my way. It's not the only way. I know plenty of people that have become great by not doing it that way, but I also know a lot of people that have tried it the other way and didn't get anywhere. So Björn asks, is there a chance to know when we overpractice a single thing and it will not get better in translating into playing? My answer to that is that you should practice a thing exactly as long as you are interested in it. When you get bored by it, switch to practicing something else. Because it's not so much about getting an immediate result, but you will never get an immediate result. It's about actually practicing in the right way. So the mantra for that is, or the motto for that is, don't focus on the result, focus on the work. Right? Results will come, but not immediately. So focus on the work and the quality of the work you've been doing. So even if you practice a set exercise, which is a thing that's in my book, after you've had enough of it, just switch to something else for a little while, and you can come back to the set exercise the next day or the next week. I don't say, okay, you have to finish the set exercise within the week, otherwise you cannot pass. Because for the people that are watching home, if you buy one of my books, there's these exercises, and then when you finish the exercise, you can make a promotion in my Discord, which is, I think it's a nice thing, right? You get a title like in chess, and you get another different color name, you unlock things, and if you reach the highest level, you get a free book. So it's really very rewarding, not only mentally, but also physically, you get a thing. But there's no timeline. So if you want to take 2 months to do set exercise, or half a year, or even a year, no problem. Like, there's people that are speed running the book, but most people that are doing that are already great players. Some like AJ that did that. I mean, he's just a professional player already. So, but I know plenty of people that are not professional players that also reach the highest level, but it took them a year and a half, maybe. So that's the only thing I could say to that question. Any more questions before I sign off? Thanks for watching. And if you want to discuss all of these concepts, join my Discord, because that's where I'm streaming right now. And I'm actually responding also to things that are being said during the stream. And if you join my Discord, we're having these discussions all the time. There's a link to that in the description. And hopefully I will see you in the Discord, or otherwise in the next video. Bye.